I want to try something a little different today, and so I'm going to make an audio accompaniment to my written commentary for Marshall 1.46. And it'll let me get a little bit more into the details of my reasoning, especially when we get to the last line of the poem, which I think is quite interesting. But first, let's look at this cup. This cup was first brought to my attention when I was reading Roman Homosexuality by Craig Williams, and it depicts a man, a younger man, lowering himself onto the penis of an older man uh, by way of a strap that's attached to the wall or to the ceiling. And then if you look on the right side, you can see someone looking on. So Williams thought that this depicts a brothel scene, since most bedrooms don't come equipped with straps from the ceiling. But then again, maybe this is just a wealthy and kinky Roman, those Romans. Um, and maybe the person looking on is just a voyeuristic servant. We can't know for sure. Uh, if you look at the faces, the details are important. You can see that the man on top, that is the receptive partner, uh, is beardless. Um, this is important because for a Roman man, it was somewhat shameful to penetrate a full-grown man, and being full-grown was normally marked by having a beard. If you look at the man on the bottom, you can see, although his face is mostly hidden by his shoulder, you can see that he does in fact have a beard. Roman men of Marshall's day were, especially in the cities, often clean-shaven. So I take it that showing this man to have a beard while the man on top does not have one is meant to indicate that this is a very illicit sexual interaction. There's nothing ugly or shameful about this from the Roman perspective. It also illustrates another point, which I'll mention in the commentary, that the division of Roman homosexuality, it's well known, um, was between the penetrator and the penetratee. Uh, However, sometimes people say that it was good for a Roman man to be the active partner, not the passive partner. And this image kind of neatly illustrates that activity and passivity, that's not really relevant. The man on top is clearly going to be the more active partner during this particular session of sex. But we have no evidence that being ridden uh, made a man less masculine, as long as uh, he was the one with his penis in the other man's anus. I'm going to give reading this a shot. Um, it's not scanned in the video, but if you want to see the scansion, just go ahead and download the commentary. Um, I'm using the pronunciation which I got from Wheelock. I'm sure that there are people who could do it better, but here goes nothing. Cum dicis propero faci facis heidele languet, protinus et cessat debilitata Venus. Expectara Juve velocius ibo retentus, heidele si properas, dic mihi ne properem. I hope I've scandalized no one by my reading. Feel free to flood my inbox with complaints and corrections. This is the first commentary. I'm sure the reading will get better. And if I decide to do a lot of these, I'll invest some time in reading about reconstructed classical pronunciation. I tried to put the longs and the shorts in there as well, but you can judge how I did. So let's go through the poem. Line 1. So first, just a rough literal translation of the first line. When you say, quote, I am hastening, do it if you are going to do it, haedalus, and then languit belongs to the next line. I take it to mean here that propero is something like, I'm getting close, I'm coming, I'm about to come, fuck me if you're going to fuck me. Foxy fuckies. Something like that. It's clear from the context that we're talking about sex, probably anal sex. Line 2. Languet protinus et cessat debilitata Venus. So when you tell me this, properos faxifakis, Haedalus, Venus becomes tired and disabled ceases. Venus immediately becomes tired and disabled ceases. Venus here is, as often, just metonymic for whatever it is that she rules over, in this case, sex and lust. Just like you could say Mars made me kill people, or Minerva taught me not to fight. Right? So Minerva would be metonymic for wisdom. Mars would be metonymic for war. So the idea here is that if Haedalus says this thing to him, then immediately he becomes less interested in sex. He starts to take less pleasure from whatever it is that he's doing. Line 3. Expectare iube. Tell me to wait. Being held back, retentus. I will come, ibo. More quickly. Velocios. Pretty clear, I think. So the idea is, if you tell me to hurry up, that doesn't make me excited. If you tell me to wait, then that is what gets me going. Now, in this last line, things get interesting, particularly in the last 4 words. First, I'll give you the translation as given by Bone. Haedala, if you hasten, then tell me not to hasten. The interpretation here would be that by telling Marshall not to hasten, that is, to wait, he will make Marshall come faster, experience more pleasure, etc. But I think there are a few problems with this. There are 2 kinds of problems here. The first is interpretive and also semantic. So first of all, I don't know any men who want to come super fast. The point, the idea, usually, is to stay as hard as possible while feeling as good as possible for as long as possible. So you're looking for that sweet spot between pleasure and sustained direction. So Marshall would be doing something quite strange here if he was the only man in history to want to come really quick. In the second place, it's not clear to me that expectare is synonymous with non properare. What I mean is that Marshall just told us what gets him off. He likes it when people tell him to wait. But waiting is not the same as not hurrying. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm getting my fuck on and some girl tells me, oh, take your time, don't hurry, that doesn't excite me. I like, personally, when a woman is into what we're doing, when she's engaged, when she's enjoying herself. And if a girl's enjoying herself, she says, don't come yet, wait, wait. Right? If someone's enjoying your erect penis, they're not going to be nonchalant about you coming or going. So non properare and expectare seem like very different verbs in this context. Marshall could have said, dic mihi ut expectem, but he doesn't. So all this just by way of saying, unless expectare and non properare are equivalent in meaning or very close in meaning, I think Bone's translation runs into some trouble. Grammatically, there are a few possibilities here. Ne properem could be a command in indirect discourse. So in indirect discourse, direct commands become subjunctives, and then ne would just be the negation. And then, of course, dik would set off the indirect discourse. If that's the case, mihe is a little strange because we would expect an accusative, but maybe in this case it just stands outside of the clause. It's possible. It could be a negative indirect command, which would make sense of mihi. Both a command in indirect discourse and a negative indirect command give you the same translation, which is approximately bones. However, I think that there's a third possibility, and I think it harmonizes with the rest of the poem and with my own experience as a man who's had sex. If we stipulate that ne initiates a negative purpose clause, it would give us the translation, say it to me if you're coming, tell me, so that I do not come. The idea here is that Marshall, between lines 3 and 4, has reversed himself. And now he's thinking, well, if you're enjoying my penis, if you are coming, tell me so that I can stay hard for as long as possible for your enjoyment. In this sense, it's rather sweet. I think this possibility is certainly worth mentioning. It's certainly grammatically open to us. And like I said before, it makes sense of my experience of sex as a man. You go into it thinking, oh, this feels great. I want to come. I want to get as much pleasure as I can. But by the end, you're not that self-absorbed. You're looking after the pleasure of your partner. Certainly, there's a lot of negativity associated with the penetrative aspect of Roman sexuality. There's a heavy accent put on its connotations for dominance and control and ownership and all these other things. And fundamentally, between two men, on the most basic level, I think the penis is still going to be something that gives pleasure to people. And just like men today pride themselves on their pleasure-giving penises and the ability of their penises to give pleasure, I see no reason why Roman men should be different. And this epigram seems like a nice illustration of that point. I also recall in the secondary literature that just like Catullus' poems or Shakespeare's sonnets, Marshall's poems often take a turn at the end. And so it's not uncharacteristic of him to put something in the last line which seems to contradict the first three. One final note, if you read the literature before about 1980, you'll see this epigram interpreted quite differently. In those cases, Haedalus is envisioned as someone who's literally in a hurry, which is the kind of base meaning of propero. But we have evidence from Ostia in an inscription and evidence from Ovid's Ars Amatoria in Book 2, where propero is used to mean coming or coming to a physical climax of some sort. I think the inscription in Ostia could be either defecation or ejaculation. For a good discussion on this, you'll need to look at J.N. Adams' The Latin Sexual Vocabulary. It's on page 253 and 254. Remember that for Marshall, a lot of old readings and old interpretations are colored by either a religious or a Victorian, which is the same thing, desire to scrub out his filthiness. So this is a much more palatable poem for a Victorian if Haedalus is in a hurry. The fact that it's portraying gay sex is bad enough for a religious type or a Victorian without it portraying a gay man in the throes of sexual ecstasy. On balance, though, the evidence suggests that that is exactly what is happening here, no matter what our prudish Victorians would like to think. I'm sure that at various times in this commentary I've used terms like gay, straight, homosexual, heterosexual, but these are all modern importations onto the Roman world. For both the Romans and most of the ancient Mediterranean, there was no gay, there was no straight. That's simply not how they divided up their sexual world. Um, for them, there was only the division between penetrator and penetratee. For a decent rundown, you can see Craig Williams' Roman Homosexuality. It's an excellent book. Or even just the paper version of this commentary, which contains a small discussion of what was acceptable for a Roman man sexually. If you've enjoyed this commentary, please download the text version. It's always best, I think, to read this yourself and to make your own judgment as to the interpretation. If you'd like to support me, please come over to patreon.com/Homeric Dialect. I'm happy to receive donations. But if you'd rather not donate and would rather just take these as they come, no worries. I will continue to make these as long as my lungs have breath. So until next time, this is Translator's Troubles. Have a great day.